I made a list. What is the list that I made? I made a list of the Hebrew Israelite camps, people, organizations, all of that. Just anything that worked, that made sense so people can see what's going on, websites, all that. Now, it's not done. It's a work in progress, but we're going to take a look at it here tonight, and we're going to get some opinion on it as well. Okay, so I'm going to switch over my screen here, and we're going to take a look at the list itself, and then we're going to edit it, and I'm going to explain a little bit of it and talk a little bit about it, and as well as look at some comments. Look at some comments as well. Okay. I think that works. Okay, so this is the ShieldSquad.com. That's the website I'm on. That's a blog I run. D-New, Adam Coleman, they've contributed. You can contribute too as well if you'd like. And let's click on it here. All right, let's make it so you can see it. Now let's go over it. All right, so you see the list is on the screen, everybody. You guys see that? This is the Hebrew Israelite camp list. Now, the title's somewhat misleading because it's not just camps, but that's why it has in brackets, plus orgs and people, standing for organizations and people. Okay, so that's what's going on. Seems self-explanatory enough to me. All right, hopefully it is to everyone else as well. Okay, so when we look at it, got it right here, I have a little bit of an explanation, all right? The Hebrew Israelite camp organizations and significant persons list is a work in progress. More additional and precise info will be added as it's received. Those listed have one thing in common. In some way, they ascribe to Hebrew Israelism. Other than that, agreement is varied. This is not a One West list, although many One Westers are on this list. This is not a Black Judaism list, although some of the groups listed are closer to that end of the Israelism spectrum. This is simply a list of Hebrew Israelite notable groups / persons. I hope that's self-explanatory enough. I think it is. Then we've got the purpose of this list, at least threefold. So pay attention here if you wonder why we did this, because a lot of people have been asking a lot of questions. Number one, to raise awareness for Bible-believing Christians. Number two, to equip Christian apologists in their apologetics ministry. And three, to aid interested parties to better equip them in their research. So that could include academics who are looking into this, even journalists perhaps. I want them to get their stories right. YAP gang, some people were saying I should take this off because they're not like the others. They're more of a research thing. But as of now, my understanding is they still embrace elements of Hebrew Israelism. I'm not saying they're bad or anything like that. They're smart guys, but I don't know if I should take them off. Some people said I should.
I was going to say, this movement is so diverse, and the leaders in it so willing to come up with their own stuff.
I got some clips on that.
That it reminds me a little bit of the Anabaptists in the sense that the only thing that held the Anabaptists together was a particular form of baptism, not even a particular belief about what baptism was.
Right.
And hence you had all sorts of different beliefs parading under the name Anabaptist. And so it isn't an overly useful phrase. And so when you've got Messianic Hebrew Israelites and you've got non-Messianic Hebrew Israelites and you've got people coming up with their own canons of Scripture, how do you even hold it all in one realm?
That's why on page 22 my book has a chart and it does some categorization of them. Now, one of the Hebrew Israelites recently called it a hit list.
Wow.
A hit list. Now, it's not a hit list. The reason why I'm doing that is so you can know who is who. It's almost like the denominational charts that Christians have been making of each other for hundreds of years. This is nothing new. Just we're only doing with Hebrew Israelites, or that people do with Islam according to the school of jurisprudence that they hold to. So what I do is show here's One West type camps. That means the type of Hebrew Israelite who comes out of the ideas that were there in Harlem at 1 West 125th Street in the late 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s until the school split. But there's camps who clearly are influenced by them. For example, if they use Yahawashai for Jesus, that's a telltale sign they embrace Lashawan Quadash, which means they're 1 West influence. In fact, I've got a great title for this episode. It's Merry Christmas with the Hebrew Israelites. Ho, 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 Yahawashai. So anyways, but so that's 1 West type Hebrew Israelism. For example, the Edomite doctrine, that white people equals Edomites or whatever,
right,
that's a 1 West thing. Not all Hebrew Israelites hold that. The 12 tribes chart, that's a 1 West thing. Not all Hebrew Israelites hold to that. Okay. However, the transatlantic slave trade equivalency thesis, which is you getting transported to the Western Hemisphere via slavery or some other form of oppression, equals you being highly likely to be an Israelite, basically. But really, it's broader than that, because if you hold to the 12 tribes chart as a 1 Wester, then it's basically if your ancestors were oppressed by colonial powers. That's the essence of it. But the non-1 West Hebrew Israelites still hold to some form of that transatlantic slave trade equivalency thesis.
Well, how would you define what you called Hebrew Israelites, Hebrew Israelism?
I go with similar to what you say, Torahism. I do call it Hebrew Israelism. Some secular scholars use the term Black Israelism. I just go with Hebrew Israelism. And the central defining component is this: at the very least, there may be more, but at the very least, folks who are Black Americans are the true genealogical descendants of the ancient Israelites. And that entails certain things. It's theologically, soteriologically, ecclesiastically relevant. Okay. So it has real praxis to it.
So with bringing up Abu, I definitely want to talk about and clear up this whole identity claim, right? Like, so I actually heard you say on a channel recently that you believe that there could have been some Jews that came across in the slave trade, but it would have been like a negligible amount, like it wouldn't have been a whole bunch, right? But you do believe it would have been some.
Well, I don't know. It's like there could be any people mixed in. And I guess if I was going to phrase it, I might be more careful. I might say there could definitely be potentially people who have Semitic ancestry who came over.
Okay.
We're not omniscient. I can't eliminate any possibility, but I might say that about a lot of groups. Now, probably not every group. For example, it's much more likely someone who has some Semitic ancestry came over than probably someone who has I'll use a modern phrase, Russian ancestry came over, right? I understand that because of dispersions and things like that. But I mean, I just don't know. But that's different than affirming an all-out thesis that really is arguing, in my view, for much more than you could get. But I don't see how I could say, I know that no one who came over in the transatlantic slave trade, none of them had any Semitic ancestry. That seems like a total overstatement. And I don't see why would someone, how would they know that? I wouldn't know. I don't know. I don't have any way to know. We're talking a lot of people over a lot of period of time. But that's different than, the broad sweeping claims that people with 12 tribes charts make, or people that, people make an association with the Igbos. I'm still learning about that. But honestly, I think there's just so much overstatement. It's like, what are we really dealing with here? And I really feel a lot of it is 1 Timothy 1:10, man. Endless genealogies. But it's interesting what he says which promotes speculation. I feel like that's what's going on. I feel like that's what's going on with so many of these conversations. But no, I would never say, I know for certain that nobody came over who had some Semitic, ancestry. I just don't know how we could know that in that way. That's different than saying, these massive people blocks, though. I think the evidence strongly militates against that.
Yeah, I think you and I would both agree that the claim, just based off genetic evidence, right? The claim that everybody that came off the slave ship is from the same descendancy is just absurd. I mean, just off a paternal descent concept, there's multiple different haplogroups that came off the slave ship. Yeah,
I mean that's a definite fact, and some of the details I think are probably lost to the, they're lost to the sands of time, for lack of a better phrase. There's just a lot we don't know. I don't know how we could know some of these things, but the claims that people make based upon some circumstantial evidence here and there, it's like, what is the need to overstate any element of the case or any semblance of a case? And it's just like, let's not overstate what any evidence we have gives us. Sometimes we're tentative, sometimes we're provisional, other times we're more confident or more certain.
Go ahead, let's get the first guest in here. We got Hebrew of Israel. Shalom, and say what's up to the people.
Shalom, you guys, Vocab Malone and Gabir. Did I say that right?
Gabar.
And
yes,
Vocab
sir. Yes,
Malone.
sir. All right. Hebrew of Israel, are you ready, man? Are you ready?
Yes, sir. I am ready.
All right. So yes, sir. So as you heard the ding before, whenever your 8 minutes is up, that's when you'll hear that time, and then I will chime in and let you know when you have 2 minutes. Okay.
Okay.
All right. 8 minutes, and your time starts as soon as I drop out.
All right. So I have basically 2 questions for you, Vocab Malone, and 1 statement. So my first question is, are you aware of any Israelite channels on YouTube that teach DNA, such as, creating a model for the biblical table of nations by using Y-DNA haplogroups and languages?
I've got sent some links about some of those. So I know there's, I think, at least 4 that I'm somewhat aware of, including, I think, one guy who was a kind of an extensive blog, but I don't know the names off the top of my head. Those aren't the main types of things that I deal with, but it's interesting for sure.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I'm an Israelite that teaches DNA, and me and a group that I'm a part of called YAP Gang, and YAP is basically the Y chromosome haplogroup DE. And in our model, we see haplogroup E as representing Shem, the biblical Shem. And because of this, we believe that, the Israelites will be from the haplogroup E subclades. And with haplogroups being passed down from father to son, anybody can look like anything and have the same haplogroup. So in our group, we don't phenotype. Like, we recognize Ashkenazi Jews, Sephardi Jews, Mizrahi Jews, Yemeni Jews, basically Jews all over the world as being actual, Israelites based on the haplogroup E marker. And we don't really use things like Deuteronomy 28 or, like I said, Lamentations, meaning black unto the ground, stuff like that. We don't use that type of scripture. But yeah, so I just wanted to lay that out when it comes to me as an Israelite and some other Israelites out here, again, YAP Gang, that teach haplogroup E and study the genetic markers of.
You're affiliated with Genesis 49ers, right?
Yes, sir, I am. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I've talked to him and seen some of his stuff, and I know there's a video that is I've seen on multiple channels. The white Hebrew Israelites torched by YAP Gang, right? Is that it?
Yeah, that was us actually going up against the British Israelism, which was kind of interesting.
Oh, wow, the Anglo-Israelite. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, And I just wanted to know, if you was aware of groups like us talking about it, because we also have other like Jewish people part of our group, like a Yemenite Jew and a Lithuanian Jew and stuff like that, people like that. So,
do you have explanations of how you came to the conclusion that E represents Japheth?
Shem.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I apologize for that. Yes.
Oh, that's all good. So what I do is use language. So when it comes to the Afroasiatic languages, particularly Proto-Afroasiatic and Proto-Semitic, I've read various papers that basically illustrate that the Proto-Semites, the first Semites, the earliest Semitic population would have had haplogroup E. If you look into the Bayesian phylogenetic analysis of Semitic languages, which deals with the earliest formation of Semites, either they would have came from Africa or they would have originated indigenous in the Levant. And so in that time period, there would have been high markers of E. And there's actual papers that do say that pre-Proto-Semites or Proto-Semites would have carried E markers. So that's why I posit that the Israelites would descend from those populations that have haplogroup E.
And you believe that we can know who their descendants are?
Yes, and I kind of use the modern Jewish population to a certain extent to mark that, because 20% of Ashkenazi Jews have E and like 30% of Sephardi have E. So it's kind of interesting.
So what do you think the main significance, let's say an Ashkenazi or Sephardic has E, what does that mean for their spirituality, their relationship with God? What do you think is the application of that?
Oh, I do this mostly for like the understanding of the ancient world. Like I have a minor in history. So when it comes to like trying to figure out the ancient Near East, that's kind of why I do this. Also, genetically as well, why I do this, because I just like the ancient world. So I just like, I just consider myself like Indiana Jones, I guess. But in terms of spirituality, of course, Yeshua or Jesus Christ, obviously he's more important. He's who you go through to be saved. But I do this side stuff, the history and the genetics for the fun of it, like connecting people and stuff.